Life and Death. Nasrudin climbed a tree to saw through a branch. A passer-by who saw what he was doing cried, "Look out! You are on the wrong side of the branch. You will fall with it."
"Am I a fool that I should believe you, or are you a seer that you can tell me the future?"
demanded the mullah. Soon afterwards, however, the branch gave way, and he fell to the ground. Nasrudin ran to catch up with the other man.
"Your prediction has been fulfilled. Tell me now, how shall I die?"
However much he tried, the other man could not now convince Nasrudin that he was not a seer. Ultimately he lost his temper and said, "You might as well die now." As soon as he heard these words, the mullah fell down and lay still. His neighbours came and found him and put him in a coffin. As they were walking towards the cemetery, there was a dispute as to the shortest route. Nasrudin lost his patience. Raising his head from the coffin, he said,
"When I was alive, I used to turn left here. That is the quickest way."
A penny less to pay. Sitting near some stepping stones across a river, the mullah saw that 10 blind men wanted to cross the stream. He offered to help them over for a penny each. They accepted, and he started to take them across. 9 were safely delivered to the further bank, but as he was making his way with the 10th, the unfortunate man tripped and was carried away by the flood. Sensing something amiss, the 9 survivors began calling out, "What happened, Nasrudin?"
"A penny less to pay,"
said the mullah. Why ask me? Nasrudin was riding along one day when his donkey took fright at something in its path and started to bolt. As he sped past them at an unaccustomed pace, some countryman called out, "Where are you going, O Nasrudin, so fast?"
"Don't ask me," shouted the mullah. "Ask my donkey."
The daughters. Nasrudin had 2 daughters. One was married to a farmer, the other to a brickmaker. One day they both visited him. The farmer's wife said, "My husband has just finished sewing. If it rains, he will buy me a new dress." The other said, "I hope that it does not. My husband has just made a huge number of bricks ready for firing. If it does not rain, he will buy me a new dress."
"One of you may be worth something," said the mullah, "but I could not say which."
All included. Nasrudin bought a handful of dates and sat down to eat them. His wife noticed that he put each stone carefully in his pocket. "Why don't you throw away the stones like everyone else does?"
"Because when I bought the dates, I asked the greengrocer if the price quoted for dates included stones as well. He said yes, all included. So the stones are mine as well as the fruit. I can keep them or throw them away."
Why shouldn't they mourn? Nasrudin used to breed chickens and sell them to the local butcher. One day he was half absorbed in the problems of his chicken run when he noticed a man passing dressed in mourning.
"Tell me,"
said the mullah, rushing to the fence,
"why are you wearing those clothes?"
"Because my parents are dead. This is how I mourn them." The next day, passers-by saw each one of Nasrudin's chickens with a black ribbon around its neck. "Mullah," they cried, "why are those chickens wearing black ribbons?"
"Their parents, as you may well imagine," said the mullah, "are dead. Why shouldn't they mourn?"
Not worth keeping. Seeing something glittering in the gutter, Mulla Nasrudin ran to pick it up. It was a metal mirror. Looking at it closely, he saw his face reflected in it.
No wonder it was thrown away. Nothing as ugly as this could possibly appeal to anyone.
The fault is in me, for I picked it up without reasoning that it must be something unpleasant. The physician. A woman summoned the mullah in his capacity as a physician because she did not feel well. When he arrived and tried to take her pulse, she was too shy and covered her arm with her sleeve. Nasrudin took a handkerchief from his pocket and laid it on the sleeve. "What are you doing, mullah?"
Didn't you know? A cotton pulse is always taken with a silken hand.
Appetite.
I have been unable to eat anything for 3 days.
Good heavens, mullah, with your appetite, you must be very ill.
Not at all. Nobody has asked me out to eat, that's all.
The secret. Nasrudin looked over a wall and saw a magnificent lawn, soft and green as finest velvet. He called to the gardener who was watering it.
"What is the secret of making a lawn like that?"
"No secret," said the gardener. "I don't mind telling you if you climb down here."
"Marvellous,"
said the mullah, scrambling down beside him.
"I'll make one for myself and turn my whole garden into a lawn like this."
"The method," said the gardener, "is merely to plant a lawn, remove the weeds, and keep it flat and smooth, cutting the grass frequently."
I can do all that. How long does it take to get it into this condition?"
"About 800 years.
"I like the outlook from my window, without grass, anyway," said Nasrudin.
Maximum capacity. An ancient and valuable fragile Chinese vase had been found by the villagers. There was an argument in the tea-house as to its exact capacity. During the wrangling, the mullah entered. The people appealed to him for a ruling.
"Simple," said Nasrudin. "Bring the vase here together with some sand."
He had the vase filled with layer after layer of fine sand, packing it down with a mallet. Ultimately, it burst.
"There you are,"
he turned to the company triumphantly.
"The maximum capacity has been reached. All you have to do now is to remove 1 grain of sand, and you will have the precise amount needed to fill a container like this."
Battle of the Sexes. In the tea-house, people were talking about the relative numbers of the sexes. "Throughout the world," said the baker, "men and women are equally balanced in numbers."
"Oh, on the contrary," said Nasrudin, "there are about 10% men."
"How do you make that out?"
90% do what their wives tell them to do," said Nasrudin.
At the frontier. Nasrudin was carrying a basket of eggs across a frontier. The egg producers of the trans-border country, anxious to preserve their rights, had petitioned the king. The king had decreed that no eggs were to be imported. The customs officers on duty easily spotted Nasrudin, took him to their post, and started to interrogate him. "The penalty for lying is death. What have you in that basket?"
The smallest possible chickens."
"That comes under livestock. We shall impound them," said the officer, locking them up in a cupboard, "while we make inquiries. But have no fear, we shall feed them for you. That would be our responsibility."
These are special chickens, said Nasrudin.
How?
Well, you have heard of animals pining, getting old before their time when deprived of the attention of their master.
Yes.
These chickens are so sensitive and of such a special breed that if they are left alone for a moment they become young before their time.
How young?
They can even become eggs again.
Try anything once. Nasrudin was lurking near a tavern. He was penniless, and besides, wine was forbidden to true believers. The Sultan's cupbearer came out, carefully carrying a delicate flagon of wine. They caught sight of one another at the same moment.
"Honourable Saki," began the mullah, "give me—"
"Give you what, mullah?" To ask for wine would be a direct admission that he drank it.
"Give me a piece of advice."
"Very well. Go and read a book." Half to himself, Nasrudin muttered,
"Oh no, that won't do."
"Why not?"
"Oh, I tried that once."
"7 with 1 stroke." A soldier was back from the wars. The tea-house was agog. "One day, on the northern frontiers, I slew no less than 6 infidels, all with red beards." There was a roar of applause. "You can't cap that one, mullah," said a wag who had just tricked Nasrudin into swearing that he would tell the literal truth for the next 24 hours. The mullah drew himself up to his full height.
"I do not boast much, and I have sworn to tell the truth. Very well. Know, all of you, that I have myself slain 7 unbelievers with a single stroke."
He stalked out, as everyone looked at him with new respect, back to his room, where 7 unbelieving beetles lay in the shadow of his fly swatter. Raw material. Everyone in the tea-house was criticizing Wali. He was generally admitted to be useless, and each person had something to say against him. "That man," opined the tailor, whose words were usually considered weighty, "is a cabbage." Everyone murmured his assent, except Nasrudin.
"Not so, Aga," he said. "You must be fair. A cabbage can be boiled and eaten. What could Wali be turned into?"
Catch your rabbit. People were talking about strange, sometimes mythical beasts, and someone in the tea-house told Nasrudin that there were monsters to be found even near his own village. As he was on his way home, the mullah saw a new animal. It had long ears like a donkey, but it was brownish, furry and chewing. So preoccupied was it that Nasrudin was able to steal up to it and catch it by the ears. He had never seen anything like this before. It was, in fact, a rabbit. He took it home and tied it in a sack, forbidding his wife to open it. Then he hurried back to the tea-house.
"I have found something," he announced gravely, "which has ears like a donkey, munches like a camel, and is now in a sack in my house. There has never been an animal like this seen before."
Immediately the tea-house emptied, and everyone ran to the mullah's home to see this wonder. Meanwhile, of course, his wife had opened the sack, unable to restrain her curiosity. The rabbit bounded out of the house and away. She could think of nothing better to do than put a stone in the sack instead and tie it up again. Soon the mullah arrived with his friends, clamouring to see the monster. He opened the sack, and the stone fell out. There was a dead silence. Nasrudin recovered himself first.
"Friends, if you take 7 of these stones, they will be found to weigh 3/4 of a pound."
Pity the poor natives. Nasrudin was on one of his many teaching journeys, travelling through a rich country, heading for the capital. As his donkey plodded along, he was more and more impressed by the orderliness and prosperity of the farms on each side of the road. He reached the city on the first day of the new moon. Here it was the custom for people to go into the streets to see the crescent. Nasrudin knew nothing of this until he realized that everyone was pouring into the open and looking up at the moon.
"They may have a nourishing country," said the mullah to himself. "But we, after all, have the moon almost all the time. She evidently appears here only when she is invisible to us."
How far is far enough? Nasrudin was at a loose end. His wife told him to go for a walk. He started up the road and continued walking for 2 days. Finally, he met a man walking in the opposite direction.
"When you arrive at my house," he said to him, "go in and ask my wife if I have gone far enough, or if she says that I must walk farther."
Economic law. During the Crusades, Nasrudin was captured and set to work on the ditch near Aleppo citadel. The work was backbreaking, and the mullah bemoaned his lot, but the exercise benefited him. A neutral merchant passing by one day recognized him and ransomed him for 30 silver dirhams. Taking him home, he treated him kindly and bestowed his daughter upon him. Now Nasrudin lived a life of fair comfort, but the woman turned out to be a shrew. "You are the man, remember," she said one day, "that my father bought for 30 dirhams and gave to me."
"Yes," said Nasrudin, "I am that man. He paid 30 for me. You got me for nothing, and I've even lost the muscles I gained digging ditches."
Private property. Trotting his donkey along a road one day, Nasrudin saw some beautiful flowers by the wayside. He dismounted to pick them, and when he returned with his posy, found that someone had stolen his cloak from the back of the donkey.
"Very well," said Nasrudin. "I shall have your saddle instead. Fair is fair."
He got on the donkey and placed the saddle on his own back. Tie up below. The mullah was aboard ship when a terrible storm blew up. All hands were ordered aloft to furl the sails and lash them to the masts. Nasrudin ran to the captain, yelling,
"Fools! Anyone can see that the ship moves from below, and your men are trying to bind it up from above."
Fire. Mulla Nasrudin was welcomed by an unctuous innkeeper who professed himself delighted to have such a distinguished guest. "Anything you want, call for it," he said. During the night, the mullah was thirsty. He called out for water, but nobody stirred. His throat was parched, and felt as though there was a fire in his mouth.
"A fire! Fire!"
he cried. The whole caravanserai awakened, and presently the host was at his side with a pitcher of water. "Where is the fire?" Nasrudin pointed to his mouth.
"Here," he said.
Instinct.
"There are some things," said Nasrudin, "that you positively know inwardly must be untrue."
"Can I have an example?" asked someone who was always looking for evidence of the supernormal.
"Certainly. For instance, the other day when I was walking along, I overheard a rumour that I was dead."
The question contains its answer. "Tell me the truth," said Tamerlane to Nasrudin as they sat in the steam room of a Turkish bath.
"I always do, Majesty," said the mullah.
"What am I worth?"
5 gold pieces.
The king looked annoyed. "This belt which secures my bathing trunks is worth just that."
"You are without value," said the mullah, "and when you talk about worth, I am forced to answer in terms of the question. If you are talking about money, I give you the exterior value, that of the belt. If you are talking about inner worth, it cannot be answered in words."
Nosebags and donkeys. "Where is Nasrudin?" said someone in the tea-house during a philosophical discussion. "Let's ask him a difficult question."
"But all he knows about is donkeys," said another. "There is philosophy in donkeys," said the mullah, hearing the word as he entered.
"All right, Nasrudin," said the baker. "Answer us this one. What came first, donkeys or nosebags?"
"Simple. Nosebags,"
said the mullah without hesitation. "But that's ridiculous."
"Prove it."
"Well, a donkey can recognize a nosebag, but a nosebag can't recognize a donkey."
"I presume that you have the assurance of a nosebag," said Nasrudin, "that it cannot recognize a donkey."
The mullah's dream. One night, the mullah woke his wife in a great hurry and said,
"Run, quickly, bring my glasses. I am having a wonderful dream, and more has been promised me by someone whom I have seen. I must have my glasses for this."
"The king spoke to me." Nasrudin returned to the village from the imperial capital, and the citizens gathered around him to hear what he had to say.
"I shall be brief," said Nasrudin, "and confine my remarks on this occasion simply to the statement that my greatest moment was when the king spoke to me."
Overcome with wonder and staggered by the reflected glory, most of the people fell back and went on their way to discuss this wonderful happening. The least sophisticated peasant of all hung back and asked, "What did His Majesty say?"
"I was standing outside the palace when he came out, and he said to me quite clearly for anyone to hear, 'Get out of my way.'"
The simpleton was satisfied. He had now, with his own ears, heard words which had actually been used by a king. Nobody really knows. Suddenly realizing that he did not know who he was, Mulla Nasrudin rushed into the street looking for someone who might recognize him. The crowds were thick, but he was in a strange town and he found no familiar face. Suddenly he found himself in a carpenter's shop. "What can I do for you?" asked the craftsman, stepping forward. Nasrudin said nothing. "Perhaps you would like something made from wood?"
"First things first," said the mullah. "Now, did you see me come into your shop?"
"Yes, I did."
"Good. Now, have you ever seen me in your life before?"
"Never in my life."
"Then how do you know it is me?"
Truth. "What is truth?" a disciple asked Nasrudin.
"Something which I have never, at any time, spoken, nor shall I."
Last year's nests. "What are you doing in that tree, Mullah?"
"Looking for eggs."
"But those are last year's nests."
"Well, if you were a bird and wanted a safe place to lay, would you build a new nest with everyone watching?"
Head and heels. "When you die, Mullah," asked a friend, "how would you like to be buried?"
"Head downwards, if, as people believe, we are right way up in this world. I want to try being upside down in the next."
Just in case. Nasrudin was walking along the street, enveloped in a dark blue morning robe. Someone stopped him and asked, "Why are you dressed like that, Mullah? Has someone died?"
"Almost certainly," said Mulla Nasrudin. "It could have happened, you know, without my having been informed of it."
Old graves for new.
"When I die," said Nasrudin, "have me buried in an old grave."
"Why?" asked his relatives.
"Because when Munkir and Nakir, recording angels of good and bad actions, come, I will be able to wave them on, saying that this grave has been counted and entered for punishment already."
Nasrudin's will.
"The law prescribes that my dependents must receive certain fixed proportions of my possessions and money. I have nothing. Let this be divided in accordance with the arithmetical formulae of the law. That which is left over is to be given to the poor."
Incomplete. Mulla Nasrudin supervised the building of his own tomb. At last, after one shortcoming after another had been righted, the mason came for his money.
"It is not right yet, builder."
"Whatever more can be done with it?"
"We still have to supply the body."
The Mullah's tomb. Nasrudin's tomb was fronted by an immense wooden door, barred and padlocked. Nobody could get into it, at least through the door. As his last joke, the mullah decreed that the tomb should have no walls around it. The date inscribed on the tombstone was 386. Translating this into letters by substitution, a common device on Sufi tombs, we find the word SHWF. This is a form of the word for seeing, especially for making a person see. Perhaps it is for this reason that for many years the dust from the tomb was considered to be effective in curing eye troubles. A request. If you enjoyed this book, please review it on Amazon and Goodreads. Reviews are an author's best friend. To stay in touch with news on forthcoming editions of Idries Shah works, please sign up for the mailing list at bit.ly/ISF list. And to follow him on social media, please go to any of the following links: twitter.com/Idries Shah, facebook.com/Idries Shah, youtube.com/Idries Shah 999, pinterest.com/Idries Shah, bit.ly/IS Goodreads, idriesshah.tumblr.com, and the main website at idriesshahfoundation.org. That was The Pleasantries of the Incredible Mulla Nasrudin by Idries Shah, presented by the Idries Shah Foundation, narrated by David Ault.